Muted. It is unmuted. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to do another podcast on cognitive distortions. Can you believe it? It's true. Another podcast on cognitive distortions, and I'm really excited to talk about it. We've got 9 that we're going to talk about, so let's do it. Who's ready? I'm ready. Welcome to Sex Addictions and Porn Afflictions. I am your host, Craig Pera, founder of the Mindful Habit System. If you're looking for more help in your struggle against sex addiction and porn addiction, visit us on the web, www.mindfulhabithelp.com. And I am excited today to talk to you about cognitive distortions again. Why am I talking about cognitive distortions? What are cognitive distortions? And how can I use them to create more agency in my life? How can I use my awareness of cognitive distortions? And let me tell you really, really quick what cognitive distortions are. And if you are joining me live, welcome. If you are listening to the recording, if you follow me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, and X, you'll get notifications when I go live. Today, we're talking about 9 particular cognitive distortions and unmasking shadows. We're going to look at those moments in places where people lose their stuff. So a cognitive distortion is an inflammatory response that you have in the moment in response to an external stimuli. Think about it like a mental reaction. And there's something about that stimuli that is triggering, that's upsetting, that touches a wound, that awakens a part. Okay. And boom, that the lens through which you are experiencing that is inflamed, is maybe rooted in reality, but inflamed. Distorted. It is a cognitive thought distortion. Distortion. So let's jump in and look at some of them. I'm going to post a link to this great article in Psych Central. It talks about 15 cognitive distortions. I'm going to focus on 9 of them. So the first one that we're going to look at today is called filtering. So mental filtering, think about a filter, right, is draining and straining all positives in a situation and instead focusing on the negatives, okay? Even if there are more positive aspects than negative in a situation or person, you focus on the negatives exclusively. Who here does that, right? Husband or wife, if you're listening to this broadcast, that focus on the negative. Now, let me share with you an aspect of the disease-based model, meaning treating this problem like they do alcohol, like they do heroin, right, is essentially problem-centric, right? You are focusing on the problems, often to the exclusion of all else. Right. So let's use the example of a guy who is killing it, right? He's crushing it, but he's defining success in his life only as sobriety. There's lots of other ways to define success that produces sobriety. But when your primary filter is not doing something, let's take, for example, the guy who was crushing it and then found himself nibbling around the edges. Well, because he was nibbling around the edges and got caught in a thirst trap on Instagram, or found himself on YouTube, going to places where he didn't want to go, and that's received as a failure, and it is. But by discounting all of the other positive things that are happening in his life, he is unable to build on that success because he's filtered out all the positive. He's filtered out all the positive. From the partners, because of the unique wound of betrayal trauma, it is very difficult for partners who are going through this to focus on the positive, because the negative is so painful. The negative is so painful. So that's called filtering. And if anybody is listening now and has any questions in the chat, put it in the chat and I will answer your question. The next one, polarization or all or nothing thinking. Okay, this is a big one. Polarized thinking is thinking about yourself and the world in an all or nothing way. And see, folks, when you're aware, wait, I just filtered, wait, this is polarizing, I'm all or nothing. That's the goal, guys. That's the goal, is to help you say, wait a minute. And this is for husband and wife, right? I'm polarizing. I'm engaging in all or nothing thinking, right? And that's extremes. Yeah, I'm a failure. I'll never be successful. It's painful. It's painful. So here's an example, right? You've decided to hold yourself to a higher standard, and you've decided to break your oldest and most impactful habit, which is lying about some aspect of your sexual expression, right? And you said, hey, I'm not watching porn. I'm now taking control. But because this is your oldest and most impactful habit, not making excuses, but bringing in awareness, right? You nibble around the edges. And then a sub-personality, a part that we call fuck it guy, right? And for those of you guys who might be a little further along, you might have an awareness of this part that you're nibbling around the edges. And, well, you've already made a mistake, so fuck it. You might as well just flush everything down the toilet. And that comes from you're all successful or you're not. It's perfect or it's not. If it's not, it's a failure. You're a failure. Why bother? So massive, massive impact for this way of thinking, and which is why I think everybody, husband and wife, should be obsessed with cognitive distortions. Here's another one, overgeneralization. This is when you overgeneralize something. You take an isolated negative event or negative events and turn it into a never-ending pattern of loss and defeat. Anchoring to the worst aspect of yourself is poison. Poison. What you're looking to do here is to build an identity of someone who feels good about themselves, right? And how do you know you're overgeneralizing? Always, never, everything and nothing. I will never be successful. He's never loved me, right? Those are cognitive distortions. Or he did this, which means he doesn't love me, right? That's not my experience with my clients. These are the same men who would step in front of a bus to save their families' lives, but haven't found the tools to address this oldest and most impactful habit, and is causing great pain, right? You can cause great pain and love someone. So that's a cognitive distortion, at least in my world it is. Okay, so overgeneralizations. Here's another one. We all do this. We all do this. Let me welcome our live visitors today. Hey, Rob. Hey, Charlotte. Welcome. Yeah, that all or nothing thinking is so important. Here's one that we all do, which is a evolutionary survival trait, is we discount the positive. Discounting the positives is similar to mental filtering. The main difference is that you dismiss it as something of no value when you do think of positive aspects, right? So same example applies there. Mental filtering is straining and removing all the positives. And that, the example I used, was focusing on the addiction, right? You can discount the positive. You can filter. You can, by focusing entirely on the negative. I realize I'm repeating myself there, so let me go on. Jumping, and I'm going to give you some examples when I'm inspired to give you one. If not, some of them are self-explanatory. And again, why am I telling you these? So when you do it, because we all do, cognitive distortion. Another way to say it is, wound is being touched. If a wound wasn't being touched, why are you cognitively distorting it, right? Why is there an inflammatory response around this deeply trained and conditioned response, which is jumping to conclusions? You interpret an event or situation negatively without evidence such a conclusion. I will never be successful. I made this mistake here, which means I'll make this mistake everywhere. I'll never be successful. Here's another one: catastrophizing. This is related to jumping to conclusions. In this case, you jump to the worst possible conclusion in every scenario, no matter how improbable it is. My daughter didn't say hi to me, and I catastrophize. I polarize. I personalize. I jump to conclusions. I filter. I overgeneralize. I discount the positive. Anyway, I do all these things. And that's why it's important to know about them. And that's why I'm so excited about sharing them, because these previous moments, heretofore known as asshole reactions, because there's another lens for that too. And I'm talking about us guys here. I'm not certainly talking to any partners. And there's a reactive component there too, where I hope some of these cognitive distortions bring you value. But this is where our shadow, or unmasking shadows, right? This is where things go south. This is the moment of interpreting an event that you've experienced. And are you experiencing that event from the first time through a child's eyes, and maybe experiencing the joy and the wonder and the hope and the the challenge, the whatever? No, it's being filtered through deeply ingrained belief systems that have you twisting, jumping to conclusion, catastrophizing, polarizing, et cetera, et cetera. And perfect timing. We're going to wrap up real soon, because I just heard the people coming doing the yard work. We've got a teeny tiny yard here in Northern California, so it's just as easy to have someone do it. So we're going to wrap up today. Hey, thank you for participating, Charlotte and Rob. So what do we do, right? We have these cognitive distortions, and now that you're aware of them, what is your cognitive distortion plan? Meaning, what are you going to do when that happens? So instantly, right? Take a breath, snap my elastic band, pause, slow it down, right? Whatever I can do. I recognize I'm being reactive. The recognition of the reaction is the call to action to be proactive. Because unfortunately, it takes a lifetime of work, probably maybe when you're 80, maybe when you're 90, right? You may not have these problems anymore, okay? But for the rest of us, these belief systems are deeply entrenched. These habits are deeply entrenched, and we're going to react. There's going to be that moment, that cognitive distortion. But if you can name it, you can claim it, and you can say, wait a minute, I am not going to allow the distortion to continue. I'm going to use this awareness as a pivot point to be in control, to respond in a way that isn't habitual and conditioned, but respond in a way that adds value to my life, or at a minimum is accurate. At a minimum is accurate. So remember, pay attention to your cognitive distortions. Listen to my other broadcasts on cognitive distortions. I'm going to post this article on my social media channels from Psych Central. I love it. I wish everyone would have a great, great, great week. So great starting the week with you. Thank you for joining me, and wish you well. Embrace your power of choice. Feed the right wolf inside you. And if you do need more support, check out the website. You'll see in the description, I give everyone who's listening to this, and my podcast has done really well, and that's because of you guys, right? Listening and participating and engaging. If you are interested in our core training program, if you use the coupon code podcast, you save 36%. Okay. So that's my way of thanking you. It's so awesome knowing you're out there, knowing you're listening, and to the thousands of people who are listening to this broadcast. Thank you. Thank you for putting your trust in me. Let's keep going. Let's feed the right wolf. Let's dive into these cognitive distortions. Remember, the obstacle is the way. And this right here, this pack that you're in here, being part of this podcast, is the choose your heart pack. Okay. This is not easy. Men, I'm doing a podcast that's coming out. You know, is it a woman asked me, is it a big ask to my husband not to do these things? And I nailed it. Like, I just crushed it in a way that wasn't offensive, that didn't make excuses, but acknowledged the reality that this is the oldest and most impactful habit. It is the cognitive distortion of our time in so many different areas. And if you recall, if you would join me in the beginning, talking about filtering and the focus, the exclusive focus on the bad habits and the addiction, like, we're literally sharing how that model is a cognitive distortion, right? So you're here to diversify your portfolio. If I was looking for a therapist, I'd look for someone who is trained in DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, and certainly anybody trained in parts work. Okay. I know not everyone's going to work with me and not everyone's going to connect with me. So I do like to share every once in a while the professional that I'd be looking for. I'd be looking for someone trained in borderline personality disorder. And we're going to talk more about that. And we're going to talk more about my journey, because it has been an exciting one recently, full of growth, awareness, a bunch of tears, and some really, really exciting stuff that I look forward to sharing with you as I process my own experiences. Okay. So love you all. Thank you for listening, and make it